Good morning, Sunny Hill. It's Tuesday morning and welcome back. My name's Theresa and we're continuing to look at the theme of Jesus' love. And today we're looking at the misfits. What does that mean? Those that don't fit into society. And we find ourselves today in the Gospel of Luke and in chapter 19, and it's all about Zacchaeus, the tax collector. Now, for those of you that know your Bible, you know what the story is all about. And Zacchaeus was a tax collector. The Romans, to put some context on it, the Romans levied heavy taxes on the nations under their control. And the Jews opposed these taxes, although they had to still pay for them, because they were supported by a secular government and its pagan gods. So tax collectors were one of the most unpopular roles in the people of Israel. They were Jews by birth and they chose to work for Rome and were considered traitors because they were taking money from people that didn't have any. Besides, it was common knowledge that tax collectors often would put on more money to make money for themselves. So if you owned £10, they'd ask you for £15 and pocket the rest. Different amounts of money, but you know what I mean. Because they wanted to make riches for themselves. They wanted to look after themselves. And this is where we find Zacchaeus. So Zacchaeus was one of these people that was a tax collector. He was a well-known tax collector. And he was a chief tax collector, actually. And so he was on lots of money and did a lot of things that weren't very honourable. And he heard that Jesus was coming into Jericho and was passing through. Now, he was a very short man in stature. So I understand with that. I know how he feels. And he knew that he wouldn't see Jesus. He'd heard about this Jesus. And so he climbed up a tree to get a better view. Because of all the crowds, he climbed up a tree. And as we look through the passage in Luke, one of the things that amazes me as we look at verse 5 was when Jesus reached the spot where the tree was that Zacchaeus was up. He just looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. I must stay at your house today." So he hadn't called out, "Jesus, Jesus, I'm Zacchaeus and I'm up here," anything like that. But Jesus knew that Zacchaeus was up the tree. Jesus knew what his name was. He knew what a rascal he was and that he'd been pocketing all the extra money as a tax collector. And he just got to the bottom of the tree where Zacchaeus was, looked up and said, "I must stay at your house today. Come down." And what I find amazing was Zacchaeus did not know Jesus at this point, but he didn't question it. He came down and was welcomed by Jesus. Was welcomed by Jesus, it tells us in verse 6. And all the people that were looking around at this situation were muttering and they weren't happy because they couldn't understand why Jesus was showing Zacchaeus love when he hadn't shown them love when he'd stolen their money. But just Zacchaeus, without any more ado, before he'd even gone anywhere, he looked up and he said, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." It's verse 8 in chapter 19. So just by Jesus showing him some love, not judging him, not telling him off, but just literally said, "I must come to your house today," and showed him some love in front of all the people, Zacchaeus fell in love with Jesus. Fell in love with Jesus and says, "I'm sorry, I realise compared to you, I am a sinner and I want to give back all that I've taken and more." And Jesus is delighted at this and he turns around and says, "Today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." What a great story. What a great thought. Now, he wasn't judged by Jesus, he was loved by Jesus. And that love turned that man's life around and he gave his life to God. There's a lesson for me and you. Are we loving the unlovely? Are we going above and beyond and not judging those that maybe society says we need to judge? Because when we do what Jesus has done here, That love and love alone has turned that around, because that love, compared to Jesus, Zacchaeus knew he was a sinner and he wanted what Jesus had. Do you and I want what Jesus has? Can we act like that too? Well, come back tomorrow and we'll unpack a bit more. Have a great day and thank you for joining me. Bye.